You know, I'm I'm a very lucky guy who's had a long career. I've gotten to play a lot of different things. I'm a stage actor. I'm a film actor, um, and I've been able to bring music with me in a lot of the work that I've done. As I'm a singer also, and uh, NCIS New Orleans gave me a lot of opportunities to combine all of those things. But I feel I'm a father. I'm a grandfather for the first time just a few months ago, 6 months ago. And that's kind of my favorite role that I'm playing right now. I'm what we call in the States, I'm a mutt. I've got a lot of Czech, uh, German, Scottish, a little English, some Dutch. I'm a mutt. Creative experiences in my career, and I was very fortunate to work with Don Belisario, who ironically, of course, created the NCIS franchises, um, and he created Quantum Leap, as well as Dean Stockwell, who, as you all know, sadly passed away just a very short time ago. So the combination of getting that opportunity when I hadn't been in Los Angeles very long at all, uh, and to get into a show of that caliber with those people, uh, Brandon Tartikoff at NBC, it just was a kind of a magical time for me. Creatively, the show just exploded. It was difficult, but it was exciting, and I learned an incredible amount from so many different people on all sides of the camera, in front of and behind the camera. And it kind of set the table for me in terms of the rest of my career, because I became known for that, and in a positive way. And I've been able to, lucky enough to be able to build on that and keep that kind of good momentum going. That we shot that back in 1988. That's when we shot the pilot for that, a long time ago. Well, that was, people say, when you were a kid, did you always dream of being a Star Trek captain when you grew up? And I never did. I never thought that that would even be possible to do that. I was a theater guy, and but I loved Kirk and Spock and that initial first run of Star Trek. That was my first involvement with the show, and I loved that show. And so when they called and said, you want to be a captain of a starship and be the first captain to go out into space 100 years before Spock and Kirk, I jumped at that. That seemed like that really lined up with what I felt I could do and do differently for the franchise, because there have been so many at that point. And it was also 12 minutes from my house. We never went on location. I was able to have somewhat civilized life. I had young children at the time, and it served me in many, many ways. But to be associated with those two shows, with Quantum Leap and Star Trek, certainly have made me a somewhat of a well-known sci-fi icon around the planet. And it's been a great ride. The sci-fi fans are the best. I guess we started this journey about 8, coming up on 9 years ago now, and I just kind of got a call out of the blue. It wasn't anything I was looking for, um, but I knew the folks at CBS at the time very well. Uh, I'd been at them with at Warner Brothers, and we'd worked together a bunch. And Nina Tassler was running the network at the time, and she called me, and my friends who were on NCIS also called me and said, "You got to do this show. You're gonna like this group of people." And I did. I do what I do with everything. I talked with Gary Glassberg, who created this. He created our show. He, along with Mark Harmon, and we talked about what the character was going to be, and the nature of the show, and shooting in New Orleans, and all the things that would bring to making a television show. And I was very intrigued by all of that. And it just kind of fit into my life at the time. And here we are now, 7 years of NCIS later. I never made a show that went over 100 episodes. And so there were a lot of firsts for me. And it was, a very hard work, but a thrilling, creative time. I love the character. I love the guy, the real guy, Dwayne Swear, who was me. My character was based on, was a spectacular man, embodied the spirit about New Orleans that I really wanted to portray also. And sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago. But he was the heart and soul of our show, and I did my best to live up to his reputation in the town and his memory and his enthusiasm and his love for New Orleans. Well, it certainly is a twist, and it was hopefully it'll be a great surprise. It certainly was to my character, but obviously, Callie Thorne is a spectacular actor, and she and I have worked together for several years now, off and on the show. And she hasn't been around for a while because I put her in jail a few years ago. But she burst back onto the scene with a vengeance this year, and she is her tricky, confusing, very smart, but very calculating anti-hero. And the fact that it turns out that she and I we had a brief affair years ago before I was married. Actually, it was when I was separated from my first wife on the show. And she and I had a brief affair during that separation, and she kept this child a secret from me. Obviously, he was born into this mob family that she was a part of, and she didn't want me to have any part of him because she knew that I would try and take him away from her. And she was right about that. So it certainly adds a spin into the last part of the season it shocked a lot of people. And I think it plays very well. We have a great actor, Drew Scheid, plays my son, our son, and that meshed up against this impending proposal to Rita and possible marriage. There's so much going on in the season. It's impossible to talk about, but it is an exciting season, all shot in the midst of the pandemic and with all kinds of protocols and safety issues, and very carefully calculated to be a show that we could make that would keep people safe, and we did that. Well, we decided that because the show was so much about New Orleans, that we couldn't ignore the pandemic, because the pandemic hit New Orleans very hard. And one of our main characters, CCH Pounder, plays our coroner, and obviously the coroners during the worst part of the pandemic were affected the most. And so to skip over that somehow and just jump ahead and pretend like nothing happened, it didn't seem like good storytelling. And I was lucky enough to be able to convince the writers and the network that I thought that we should go that direction. So we actually start the season in a bit of a flashback to just before the pandemic really hit the city. And we deal with retelling that story, how it affects and lands for all of the characters on our show, and how it affects Dr. Wade the most, how it affects law enforcement, all those issues, and then how it affects the city, because that again that city was the beating pulse of our show, and the city died. I call it the day the music died, and we couldn't shoot a scene with musicians live for all season until the very, very last episode. People couldn't sing, people couldn't play horns because of the concerns about the disease spreading. So there were so many issues involved with it, but again, it felt real. And yes, we were making a fictional show, but there's this pandemic has affected all of us, much as 9/11 affected the storytelling and the writing here in the States. This has affected us in another very, very powerful way. And I'm glad that we were able to still tell great stories, given the parameters that were forced upon us because of the pandemic, and at the same time deal with the pandemic in an honest way. I feel completely different. I had no relationship with New Orleans prior to going down there. I'd shot a very short period of time on a movie based on a very famous Latin American movie. Then I can't remember the woman's name who starred in it, but it was Elsa and Fred, and it was Shirley MacLaine starring in the role that the Latin American actor starred in. But so we shot that in New Orleans, and I was there for a couple of weeks really, and so I didn't get a real strong vibe for it. But I'm a huge fan of the city. The music scene is unparalleled. Uh, the history of the city, the people who live there, this kind
The
of
food.
everybody throws in and helps each other out, and it was a magical place. It's tough. It can be a rough city. Certainly, you know, we had some hurricane issues the last year that we were there. It's a beautiful place, and I'm looking forward to getting back. I have a lot of friends there, and I it will be part of my life forever. Nice to meet you too. Thank you. There were a lot of difficult scenes to do. You know, the most difficult part of the last season was really trying to figure out how to work around COVID, and um, we our most difficult sequence we shot at the very end of the year in the last episode, um, and it involved uh, rooftops of New Orleans. It involved the streets of New Orleans. It involved Jackson Square. It involved musicians, bad guys, guns being shot, uh, physical act, you know, fighting, and we were able to organize it with we had for the first time all season 300, I think 300 extras. We had three different bands. We had to lock off a bunch of streets. We had drone shots. We had everything going on, and it came out as, you know, this kind of magnificent sequence, and something we hadn't done for a whole year, and it reminded all of us that we used to do those kinds of scenes almost once an episode. It seemed like before the pandemic. So um, we that sequence, when you see it, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. But it was it was a challenge, and of course I'm having to chase these guys through the streets of New Orleans for a couple of days of running, 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 and happily I survived it. Everybody, watch NCIS New Orleans, the final season 7. You're gonna love it. Please, whatever you're doing, drop whatever you're doing and catch up with the final season of NCIS New Orleans. You won't regret it. It is time well spent, and it's our last season. So take the time, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it for you.